You're listening to Online Pet Health Podcasts with Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinarian rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealth.com.
Hey Vet Rehabbers, it's another one of my Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcast, and we have the honor today of chatting with the IAVRPT Vet Rehab Therapist of the Year for 2020, Laurie Edge Hughes. Laurie is based in Canada in Calgary and has a practice called the Canine Fitness Center. Before I dive into my chat with Laurie, a quick word from our sponsors. PulseVet are the global leaders in veterinary shockwave technology. They manufacture the ProPulse and Versatron family of products. Now, for those of you that don't know what shockwave therapy is, it's a non-invasive, high-energy sound wave therapy. It can be used in both small and large animals, and it's mainly used to treat soft tissue injuries and conditions and musculoskeletal conditions. With over 20 years of clinical research, PulseVet is used by top vets and vet rehab therapists, and it's used to improve the quality and speed of healing, to relieve pain, stimulate bone and tissue growth, and improve mobility for their patients. For more information, you can go to pulsevet.com. Now, in my chat with Laurie, she explains to us how she actually wanted to be a vet and follow in her dad's footsteps. She shares with us her journey as one of the founders of the vet rehab profession and one of the first people to start lecturing in the field of vet rehab. She also shares with us how she juggles having a ranch, her online business foreleg, as well as consulting at her practice. She has a practice manager as well as 7 therapists. So we hear the ins and outs of the running of the Canine Fitness Center. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. Over to Laurie. Hey, Laurie, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me.
Laurie, what an amazing achievement to win the very first IAVRPT Vet Rehab Therapist of the Year. Congratulations. I was there obviously when your name was announced. It was at the Vet Rehab Summit. How did you feel when you heard your name?
Well, I was very overwhelmed. I knew I was one of the candidates. So you're prepared, but it really hit me with a flood of emotion when it was like, yes, you're the one who won, and it was very much, a culmination of 28 years. It's going to be 29 here in April. 20 years of dedication to this field and it's my passion, and just to kind of know that I've been noticed. I was recognized through all that time in what I was trying to accomplish. So yeah, humble, and so appreciative, and yeah.
And what's amazing is it's voted by your peers, from people in the field, which I think makes it even more special. But I remember, I'm on the board of the IAVRPT, and I remember when we were having discussions about this award, and I remember thinking, vets all over the world, vet nurses, you hear all the time of this person's vet of the year, all the other professions sort of in the animal world. Me being a vet myself, obviously I'm following them. I just used to see them all being recognized. And, we thought as the IAVRPT, we don't have something like this where our vet rehabs, because if you think about it, we have some amazing people all over the world in vet rehab. And a lot of them are, they are the forerunners of vet rehab. A lot of the things that we do as vet rehab therapists have been founded and taught by people like yourself. So it's so important for me, and it's something that I'm really passionate about, is recognizing the people in our field. So a huge congratulations. What do you think this award going forward is going to do for our profession?
You know what, and it's one of those, I'm not sure, but I think it's good. I think it's a good connector around the world as well, so that everybody is keeping tabs on who else is out there, because some of us may do that just naturally through our different avenues, and for me through my teaching and people that I've met along the way. But I think it's wonderful for all of us to kind of get to know what's going on in different places around the world. And I loved that there was such a world representation in the group of finalists, that was really awesome. But I think it's a good connector, very much a good connector, because as you said, there's nobody that's there's nobody giving me an award in Canada for what I do. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that connection. And that was actually the theme of the Vet Rehab Summit, connection.
Yeah.
So that award was actually so ideal just to round off the day. But you're right, because we had all those different finalists from all over the world, and there were people there, that maybe we would never have heard of before. And one of the things is that, even when we have our conferences, there's certain people that are able to afford to fly to conferences, right, but there are other people that we don't get to meet. Luckily with the online world, we're actually able to, those barriers of distance now are taken away. So through online, we're able to meet people, but it was amazing. So even, obviously, congratulations to you being the winner, but even those finalists, it's an amazing achievement. Just them Absolutely. Also being recognized. So how did your team and how did your clients respond when they heard that you were the winner? And in Calgary, did you get in the newspaper, or was there anything else happening?
No. It just kind of goes on. My clients who knew, they were like, oh, well, they're cute, right? Oh, we always knew it, but it doesn't matter who won. Your clients are always going to say that about you because they love you. So it was like, oh, we always knew it. And, but, and my mom was proud. So that's good. And I think it maybe shocked some community members out. I live in the country, and the people who think, oh, Laurie does that weird thing with dogs. So they kind of go, oh, it's legit, apparently.
It's actually a thing. She actually does something.
Actually a thing. We thought she was just like poking dogs in her spare time. I don't know. No, but it was, it was humbling because, you still have the ones that love you because you're their therapist, and then everybody else was back to normal. I'm getting groceries just like everybody else. No local papers picked it up.
The one thing that's quite exciting, because obviously of COVID, we didn't have the Cambridge conference, and it would have actually all happened there. So you get to relive it a little bit, and that'll only be next year. You'll actually get your award at next year's Cambridge if we have it. And hold thumbs that we have it. But it's going to be, you're going to be able to relive this, and it's not going to be over even this year. So next year you'll be able to stand up in front of all of us and get your very well-deserved award.
Oh, that'll be nice too. Yeah.
So let's move on to talking about the practice. So, you mentioned that it's nearly 29 years since you've been in the field. Tell us how you got into the field of vet rehab.
My story is one of those long drawn out stories. Everybody else can tell like a faster story, but I grew up the product of a vet and a nurse. So I knew I wanted to go into healthcare. I thought I wanted to be a vet, but I didn't, but I was going to be a large animal vet and make all the farmers call the lady vet out when they couldn't figure things out. I thought that was glamorous. And then I realized I don't want to be, outside with my arm stuck up a cow for most of my life. And then I also realized I don't have drugs. I don't care about the innards. There was a lot of stuff about vet medicine just from watching my dad that I'm like, oh, I'm just, I'm not really thrilled about that. But I twisted my ankle, had to go for physiotherapy. And I realized this is the part of healthcare I liked. It's the outside parts, and you can actually touch them and make a difference that way. So I got into physiotherapy right out of high school. In my third year, because it was a 4-year program, in my third year on the ranch, one of the fellows that had brought his horse to help move the cows in had said, that his horse had a sore front leg, lame on the front shoulder. And my dad had just said, well, just give him selenium, which is what my dad said for any soft tissue injuries. He's an old school cow vet. So that was his big ticket item there. And he said, Laurie, you're in physio school. You should be able to figure it out. So I stretched the horse's front leg, figured it was biceps tendon, showed him how to stretch his horse, and it worked. So then, and there wasn't there was at that point in time, yeah, ACPAT would have existed. And the Netherlands Physio group would have existed, but there wasn't anything else. I didn't even know about them. So my second job out, my first job out was in a hospital, and the second job out was at a private practice in the nearest town. And the lady who owned that practice was a Scottish physio trained in the UK and had done a bunch of horse courses and was treating horses. And that was my second job out. So really it was about being the right place at the right time. So I took all the horse courses. I was involved in the creation of our Canadian association. So at the time, the Canadian Horse and Animal Physical Therapists Association. I took all the horse courses that we were putting on. I thought I was going to treat horses, but I started treating dogs because my boss that owned the clinic, she was treating horses, and I really didn't want to be her competition because it's not really good for an employee to set up business against their boss. So I started just treating dogs, and I was doing more and more dogs. The association members were like, how come there's only courses on horses? We want some stuff on dogs. And Laurie, you're treating dogs. So Laurie, you create the course. So I did. And in 1999, I taught the first course in canine physical therapy and physiotherapy in both Canada and the US. 2001, the first one in canine in Australia. 2003, 2004, I started teaching for Canine Rehab Institute and taught there for almost 10 years. Along the way, I got my master's degree in animal physiotherapy through the University of Queensland in Australia, where I was also the part-time teacher within the clinical instructor for part of that program. Let's see, and basically then continued on, derived our canine curricula here. So we have a diploma in canine rehab here in Canada. So everybody else can say they took a course, and I have to give this long, drawn out, read all these books. I laugh because I have my father's old textbooks from 1955, 1963. I read these cover to cover. They still smell like cigarette smoke from the 60s, but anyways, but that's how I basically had to self-learn and trial and error and grow it to something.
Yeah. So, and that's why you were the IAVRPT Vet Rehab Therapist of the Year, to recognize that, so that's what I'm saying, is like people like you. It's amazing for me. Like I wish that I could transport back to that time. Obviously I was around at that time, but I was at vet school. So it's completely unawares. Like part of me wishes I could have been like a part of that time, So I did my CCRP in 2005. So it's a little bit later on, everything had already been sort of established there. I can't remember when the CCRP started. The University of Tennessee, but
I think it was 2002 or 3.
So it's just a few years later on, but by that stage most things had been established. So then when did you start your own practice? So let's chat about your practice and how you set it up. Did you move away from that other vet physio and start right then, and is that where the same practice that you're in now?
No, so the other physio was a human physio, right? So that was a human physio clinic. And I basically started first, I did house calls. And then, let's see, trying to figure out the timeline, because in 99, anyway, so 99, my son was born. And so that was, I also had taught the first courses while I was pregnant with him. And then I essentially was working out of my home office, which is there. And so I was taking dogs out of the home office, doing a little bit of traveling to people's houses. I did a short stint in a vet clinic, in one of those, and I'm sure there's lots of vet rehab people out there who will hear this, in some room where they really didn't care about you. And it's like, yeah, whatever. Okay. That was the worst of all the places. And so I was doing this here, let's see, from about that time that I started, so 93, 94 until 2004 is when so I was working as four-leg rehabilitation therapy until in 2004 is when we set up our clinic, or 2003 is when I met my business partners. They had brought their dog in to see me. And the first time it's all fine working on the dog. The second time they tell me that they're thinking of opening up a rehab facility. And I thought, oh, great, here's, because they're vet background. And I thought, great, here they think it's going to be that easy. They don't have any training in rehab and they want to open up and get a magic dishwasher. That's what I call the underwater treadmill. So they wanted to get a magic dishwasher and they thought, there we go, we'll do rehab. So I smiled politely and was like, oh, that's great. I said, you're really going to have to get the education and learn all these things. And then the third appointment, they came back, they said, we've been thinking about it and we'd like to partner with you. So that's how it was, basically like almost going into marriage after 3 dates. So we created the Canine Fitness Center in Calgary started construction in 2003 and we opened on March 17th. No, that's St. Patrick's Day. March 16th in 2004. So we are coming up to 17 or 18 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how does the practice setup look? I mean, how many therapists have you got? What facilities have you got? Maybe just give us a little rundown.
Sure. Well, we're in our second iteration. We're in our second building, which is, and I have to say, we were so devastated when we had to leave the first one. And we are so delighted in our new space, I have to say. So we've been there for about seven or 8 years now. Okay. So no, actually 5. Never mind. The numbers don't matter. So I was actually sitting there thinking this morning, okay, how many staff do I actually have now? So started counting, and including me, we've got 7 physiotherapists and 7 and 9. Was it 9 assistants and my business partner in there. So I think we're a total of 16 now. Like I said, I was doing the math. We might be 17. I'm trying to remember if I included everybody, but I don't have enough fingers to do it all at once. So anyways, yeah, we've grown quite a bit. All the therapists are part-time because that's kind of what they want, and they're human physiotherapists. So they have to do some human hours to keep their license. So they're all happy to work part-time doing, some are doing 1 day a week, some are doing 3 days a week, or 4 days a week. And I'm like, I'm just happy to take a, so it's really grown. Oh, and the clinic. So we have 4 treatment rooms. We've got an underwater treadmill room. We've got a room for our endless pool. We've got a big exercise area and staff room, washrooms, and the little human treatment room. So I opened up 2 Hands Physiotherapy, a little human treatment room to treat dog owners. And it's not even one that we market at all, but it was just a way to help some of the therapists keep their human hours. And because we always had enough dog owners who were saying, oh my gosh, look at how great you've done with Sparky. Do you treat people too? So we opened up the room to solve a couple of problems there. So yeah, we're in 4,100 square feet. Sorry, we talk feet for buildings in Canada, even though it's half metric.
So I mean, that's a lot of staff that you've got.
And we have a massage therapist. Yeah. Sorry.
So your business partner, you said, is also working there. So that he's a vet, and did he go on and do through the CRI or through University of Tennessee? Is he working as a vet, or what is his role there?
Yeah. So she and her husband are both vets, right? So but they were in research. So he's an immunologist. He flies around, gives lectures at various vet schools. She was in research and actually, like they worked for Pfizer, they worked for all these other ones and were involved in vaccinations and vaccines. But the interesting thing about being in research is you don't need a license because you're traveling around. So they were not licensed. So the husband was not really part of the day-to-day, but my business partner, Amalia, was in day-to-day. So no, she developed the hydrotherapy side of things, and then the physios did the physio side of things. So that's kind of how it separated out. And because of all of my teaching, she sat in on all of the teachings that would come through the clinic. So she kind of through osmosis, yes, and also being the right place at the right time could take some of that training. But she wasn't really, because of the lack of license, she wasn't hands-on to the same extent, no.
Okay, so have you got a practice manager who coordinates all that staff and the hours and the consults and all of that?
Yeah, so we definitely had to get in a practice manager. And for the first little while, we didn't have one. And then it gets so big that you're like, okay, this is crazy. So then we got a part-time practice manager. And then there was a big staffing blow up. And we removed that practice manager, brought in a new practice manager, and she's full-time. So yeah, we definitely need a full-time practice manager.
And what has been the biggest challenges of having such a big practice? Because if you think about it, a lot of vet rehabbers usually start mobile like you did, and then they expand and then they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I remember with myself, as I got more staff, the more trickier things became because you have different personalities. For you, what has been the biggest challenges as you've grown?
Right. So I think the practice manager that's huge. I don't think you can manage more than maybe 2 people unless you have a practice manager. So that's been huge. And it's interesting that you asked this question because it is something I've been thinking about this week, because I'm listening to an audio book all on it's interviews of leaders. And I thought, you know what, that is something that I have very consciously tried to do, is develop leadership skills, learn different things about interacting with people and having staff and even hiring, right? And the kind of questions you should ask, and having a multi-part interview process, hiring process, and very much being conscious of listening to your staff, trying to get to know your staff, know what makes them happy, what makes them tick, going in that regard. And I have to say, so I've made an effort from my part, but our current office manager has such good HR skills and such good interaction skills. And she's very conscious about that as well. And that's made a huge difference. We've got a very cohesive team at this point. It's good. So we don't want anybody, this toppling the apple cart. And which is why the hiring and interview process is so important too.
Yeah, and I think that's something often we only learn once we've hired a few people that don't work in the team.
Right.
And I've chatted about this before on the podcast. It's about really knowing what your core values are and what the practice's core values are, and then asking questions around that, when you're interviewing. Because sometimes you think, well, she's so sweet, she's so lovely, or he's such a nice guy, and his credentials are all great, but then there's something that's just off, and that might be just something as simple as their ethics, for example. That then you misalign, and then they misalign with everyone, because if everyone's aligned, there's one person who's maybe just not as ethical as everyone else, then people, you don't get on with them, and then you'll start to think, no, this is not good, this is not okay. So the setting of those core values. One of the things which I think it must be really great for you is that having all those part-time people is that if somebody does get sick, because people are part-time, they're able to step up and help out. I think one of the things when you have full-time vet rehabbers in your practice, when one gets sick, there isn't another person, right? So let's say you hire 2 or 3 and you're all working full-time, then the part-time situation sometimes helps. Not all the time. Obviously, people have families that got other commitments.
Right.
But usually, one of the people that are working part-time can say, okay, well, I'll take that afternoon. I'll help you out. Is that something that works for you when people are sick? Because that's always a juggle, right?
Right. Sometimes, because usually the therapists have something else that they're doing on the other days. So, but what we can do is on their days, they've been really great about, well, you know what, I'll extend my day by an hour on this end or an hour on that end. So they usually have the flexibility within the days that they've given us to extend it a little bit. So that really helps out. I mean, I couldn't find somebody to do the mat leave, to cover the mat leave for one of my therapists. So I'm doing 11.5-hour days on Tuesdays and Thursdays and full days on Saturdays. And so I am that buffer right now. And when the first of the pandemic hit and I had half of my therapists choose to isolate, stay home for, a month, 2 months, that was 100% on me. Yeah. So I was basically doing a lot of hours, a lot of gin.
As a business owner, that's always the case, right? The buck ends with you. It's always, at the end, it's always got to be your responsibility.
Right.
So 11.5-hour days are long. That's really long.
Yeah.
So normally, let's say like not now covering maternity leave, like what would your week look like? So like how many hours are you consulting? You've obviously got 4-leg, you've got your teaching, and maybe not having to do as many in-person things now, but you might still be doing lots of stuff online. So chat to me about your week, how you fit it in.
So for a long time now, I take consults, I take patients Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. So those are the days that I'm in Calgary, at my clinic. So the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, because let's be real, there is never a day off, are all spent either on the admin portion of the clinic or working on 4-leg and content and emails. I get a lot of emails from all the teaching that I've done. I get tons of email questions. So working on that, and let's see. And then, well, the kids are grown, so they can feed themselves mostly. And I live on a ranch. So and I end up doing more the bookkeeping and the taking care of the stuff that has to be done, paying bills and all of that. So I juggle quite a bit. Yeah.
So is your dad your vet for the ranch?
No. He was. So my dad passed away 3 years ago. Yeah, no, that's all right. He passed away 3 years ago. So yeah, he did do a lot of the vet stuff for the ranch. So yeah, so now we have to hire a vet, which is weird.
Yeah, it's nice when you have a family member.
That's okay, because ranch.
Yeah, and so what is your? Sorry, carry on.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's funny because I had the hired hands who were so used to my dad being able to get them stuff and do stuff. So they'll be like, well, Laurie, can you get us that flea medication? I'm like, no, I don't do that. I cannot get you the flea medication. So yeah, no, I treated one calf last year that had, his little hooves were turned backwards, and I made splints for him. So I felt that my skills were useful there. But otherwise, no, not so much.
So, so basically, what animals have you got on your ranch, and how many?
We have 450 cows.
Wow.
Yeah, 3 horses. Well, 2 that are ours, 1 that's the hired hands, and chickens. I've got 2 chickens left. An owl got 4 of them, but 2 chickens. They're not. My husband would be mortified if I considered them ranch animals, but so the cows, mostly cows.
Is your husband mainly then managing the ranch? Is that his thing, or do you have somebody doing that for you?
No, he manages the ranch,
Yeah.
and then one son works on the ranch and one hired hand.
Okay.
So yes, I'm managing them. I'm doing all the payroll for them.
Okay.
Ugh.
So looking back at the practice now, if when you get clients, where are you getting them from? Do you have good relationships with the veterinary practices? Or is it a lot of, having been established for such a long time now, you probably have a lot of word of mouth. If you had to look at the split of where most of your patients are coming from, what percentage would you say were coming from vet referrals and what from word of mouth and any other form of marketing you do?
Right. I would say word of mouth is the biggest right now. And when I teach the business component in our animal rehab division diploma program, and I have a section all on business, and I say, yes, you have to market to the vets, but that's not you have to, but it's a slow uptake because vet school doesn't train the vets to refer to all the other practitioners out there, right? And it's not drilled in, and interprofessional working together it's not in the same. And I understand that there will be vets who are like, hey, we do so, but it's compared to what we get on the human side, the forced interaction, the forced, okay, you need to go and learn about occupational therapy, and you need to go and learn about what the dietitians and you need to go to the rounds with the doctors. So it's different. And I don't think then the vets automatically think, oh, rehab could fix that. Oh, rehab would be good for that. So they might see, whatever, 10 patients in a day that would be great for rehab, but they don't think to refer them. So I always say you got to market directly to your audience, directly to the animal owner. So from that regard, the best way we can target that is through our existing clients, and build the relationship with the existing clients, get them, on board, understanding the story, getting them to tell their friends, being active on social media. We were very active. We had a very active marketing campaign prior to the pandemic. And where, we would send out postcards, we would have offers every month. It was very active. And then the pandemic hit. And honestly, we are busier than we have ever been. So I don't have to market, and maybe that's foolish but we can't handle any more clients at this point in time. We are busy. So right now, the only thing that's happening is the word of mouth, the engaging with the clients who are coming in, the social media presence, a good website. And in regards to marketing to the vets, I always think your best marketing to the vets is your reports, your communication back and forth with them. And you need to look at that as marketing, not just, oh, do I have to write this report? It's like, yes, you want to write this report so that you are in that vet's mind when they see a case that looks similar.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that you have to write the report anyway. And I think a lot of us struggle to find time for marketing, especially if, it's you and maybe another vet rehab therapist. You spend most of your time working in the practice, trying to find that time around your clients. So you have to write that report. And when the vet gets a report, so I know as a vet, when I was working as a vet, it reminds you of that service. So when you read it, if I refer to someone else and then I get a report, it reminds me. So then when I see other patients, I'm thinking, maybe I should refer this patient to that specialist or whatever. So that's really, really where there's strength. And they also get to see, what you've done. And then when they see that patient, if they see it quite soon again, then they'll often say, oh, I got a report. And then that's when that communication happens with the owner. And then the owner sings your praises like they do to everyone else, to the vets. And then that makes the vet feel really good about having that relationship. And then they think, well, this is good for me, you know, like I should keep referring because this client of mine is so happy, you know, this is a good thing.
I always like to sometimes coach the clients too, and tell them, be sure to thank your vet for referring you. And so that way it's like, oh, I will. And I kind of always think about that as a little bit of a sneaky way to let the vet get credit. And then they feel good and they get to say, you're welcome for what I did.
No, I love it. I also recommend to vet rehabbers, you know, to say like, you know, I always say something nice, obviously only genuinely about that vet. And then often that will go back, you know, to the vet. So the vet would have said, you know, oh, she speaks so highly of you. And, you know, and then, you know, it makes them feel good. But I like that. Make sure that you thank them for referring. So then, it really makes them feel special.
I've always said as well that you are educating vets about rehab one vet at a time and one condition at a time. Because the other thing I have found is that just because you've got Dr. So-and-so at this practice who's bought in, it doesn't mean that he's told any of the other vets at that practice, which is frustrating. And it doesn't mean that just because he's seen you do a great job with a post-op cruciate, that he's going to think, I need to send this neuro dog there as well. So it is an unending process.
Yeah, and to be honest, you know, having worked in a vet practice myself, we actually don't have the time to have that communication. I mean, I can remember hardly really speaking to the other vets. We were literally in consult, finish consult, go straight into theatre, sometimes no time to eat anything, straight back into consult. And then it's like the end of the day and the other vets have either left or they're still in consult, and we don't get a lot of socializing or time to actually talk. You might speak to the vet nurse or you might speak to the receptionist, but time, and if you do get a chance with another vet, it's always about that specific case that you've got. So you've got a dog on the table or a dog on the consultation, and you say, I'm going to just get a second opinion from my colleague. You go next door, you say to them, can you come and have a look at this? And then they come, quickly have a look, and they give their opinion, and you say, yeah, okay, I'm with you. That's it. But to talk about cases that, like that kind of thing where you've had afterwards, and unless you actually purposely in a practice have like rounds, you know, there's some practices that have things called grand rounds where they're actually dedicated time where they sit and talk about difficult cases and what they did so that the younger vets can learn. You often don't get that communication. So that's why you'll have one vet that refers to you and the others don't. But I
one vet, one case.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it's good advice not to put all your eggs in one basket. So, I mean, I must say from my practice, it was a lot from word of mouth in the beginning. And then I built up a lot of referrals from practices. But, you know, I've had experience with vet rehabbers that have, you know, completely just stopped with their marketing because they've got a bit of word of mouth. And then they've got like 3 practices where they're just getting all their clients and they have waiting lists. They can't, and they think to themselves, I don't need a market because I'm so busy right now. And then what happened is the one practice decided, we're going to jump on this bandwagon. We're going to get an underwater treadmill.
We're going to do our own.
Yes, we're going to open up our own center. And it had a massive effect on their practice. Really. But that was like 50% of their referrals was coming from that one particular practice. And so that's what you've got to be really careful of. So you can never sit on your laurels and not market. You always got to continually do all the different avenues in which you can, like you say, social media, maybe, you know, working on your word of mouth, working on your clients and the vets. But you can't sit back and think that it's going to, because it's always changing. Everything is always changing. And you never know if there's going to be a competitor opening. That's the other thing. So that's a vet practice, that's a competitor. But somebody else might think, hey, I want to be in this area and open up just down the road. And suddenly then you had the whole town and now you've got half the town, you know.
Yeah.
It takes a while for that other person to build up, but I've heard of practices where the other, you know, somebody else comes in and they've got something different, some other unique selling point that they offer that has basically got people to start moving over.
Shiny object. Everybody is shiny object.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's true. And then and not taking your current customers for granted, making sure that you are interacting with them and e-newsletters and treating them well and all of that, just not to take for granted the clients that are in your facility.
Yeah, so we don't always want to be focusing on getting new clients.
Right.
So we can, but we've got to always remember to keep our clients. So client retention is so important, like you say. Yeah, and I think that experience, I think us as vet rehabbers are really good with dealing with clients and giving them a good experience. And I think that we're lucky in that we have, so people measure us up against normal veterinary practices. And most vet practices are like, they're in and out, and I think as the years have gone by, they become more corporate. They lack that sort of human touch. Whereas I think we are so brilliant with that. We're so brilliant with connecting with our clients, connecting with our patients, and we also give them time, right? Because our consults are so much longer. So yeah, I think customer experience is something that we pretty much do well, but I'm sure there are areas that we can always improve. So we can't just think, you know, we're good at.
And I think it also depends on the background that you come from. So having taught a lot of veterinarians over the years, it was one thing that I would say, like, it is so important that you make friends with your client. You get to know them, you ask questions about them, you understand their life, you know if they've got little kids at home, you that human connection, because the dog does not drive itself. And the physios got that because you spend that time with your client and you ask them questions. And I think maybe even the vet nurses, the vet techs, spend that little bit more time talking to the client somehow, you know, and the vet kind of comes in, does what they do, and out the door, and maybe they don't get that. So that was one I found when I was teaching for Canine Rehab Institute, that I was really trying to hit home that if you make friends with that client, you can have a client for life and all their friends. And that is huge to build that relationship. And I would say that most of my clients, I consider a friend in some capacity, right? So, but I think that you've hammered on it very well, that it's different. Like the vet rehab side is very different than vet medicine side.
So let's chat about foreleg. So obviously this takes up a lot of your time. Teaching is something that you're so passionate about. So foreleg, maybe just give us a rundown of exactly what it is for those people that are listening.
Right. So foreleg.com, I established back in 2012, I think. And basically what I was noticing is that the rehab practitioners were leaving their training, and then they just were almost dropped, in that there wasn't a way to either remember some of the training, or, you know, I wish I could just see that again. So it was to kind of bolster and remember what they had learned. I found that people were forgetting at least, you know, whatever, 30 to 50% of what they learned, because they would ask questions. So it's like, we never learned that. And I could say, yes, you did. It's on page 297 of your manual. Oh, so to realize, but it's a lot of stuff in one. So to remember what they were taught and to build on that, because the basic training is just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more. And coming as a physiotherapist background, I felt that there was so much more background from the physiotherapy profession that wasn't in the basic training, because everything kind of got distilled down into a 2-week course, right? Well, it's a degree. It's not a 2-week course. It's not just 2 weeks of information and there you know it. So I was inspired then to be able to help create something so that it would practitioners could continue to learn and continue their own information. So basically, I've been putting content on Foreleg since 2012. So there's 11 years of content on there. A lot of my different teachings, a lot of new stuff. I'm also very passionate about looking at research and being able to distill it into useful clinical tidbits, or why does this paper matter? So and because a lot of, boots in the trenches folks don't get the time to go through all of the research and put it together and figure out why does it matter and is it going to change? So you've only got 15 minutes. Should I read this article or not? So putting all of that into there because I saw that once they finished the programs, there wasn't anything, and there wasn't at that time. There was nothing else other than actually going to a course and learning, in a 2 or 3 day period of time, some new concept, but there wasn't a way to remember what you had forgotten and an easy way to learn things. So at this point in time, I've turned it into a library because I was creating content. At first, I was creating content weekly, and I had enough from all the stuff. And then I was creating content every second week and answering questions in the other week. And I've just basically moved it now to being a library. So I'm trying to create content once a month, but there is 11 years of content there as a library. And I started calling it a library because I had people saying, Laurie, I use it as a library. So if I have a case coming in and I just want to look and I've got some ideas for, remind me how I deal with medial shoulder instability, or how do I mobilize the carpus, or what are some exercises for this or that. So I've turned it into a library at this point in time, and a little bit less of the content generation because I'm also very politically active. So I am the advocacy lead for the animal rehab division of the Canadian Physiotherapy Association. So I end up writing lots of letters and being on lots of teleconferences and all the rest. So even though I was only working the 3 days a week at the clinic because Foreleg was so busy, and now I've had to reduce Foreleg because the advocacy component is so busy. So yeah. So what else about Foreleg? I think that's about it. So
it sounds to me like it's like a resource library, So
yeah.
I like that. So if somebody's got a particular case, and especially I think for people that haven't seen those cases a lot, let's say it's a biceps tendinopathy and you've maybe treated one, and it's a nice place to go to just recap and get some information. So you feel a little bit more confident when you have to go into your profile. So obviously you have Foreleg that you're creating content for. You're also lecturing still. I mean, I see lots of courses advertised, not so much anymore. I know.
Yeah, not in the last year.
But I remember actually once you actually came to South Africa. When was it? Was it like 2014? Does that sound right? Or 13?
Yeah, I've been to South Africa twice. But yeah, that was likely the more recent one.
Yeah, I remember, and you did a course, and I really wish that I could go, but I just had a baby, so I couldn't. I remember, and I mean, you travel and you do lectures. What is your speciality, would you say?
Right.
You love to teach.
Yeah, the manual therapy, the spinal manual therapy, and it's one of those. So I've got the introduction to spinal manual therapy, and then I've got the advanced spinal manual therapy, and then I have the assessment and manual treatment of the extremities. And then I've done a craniosacral course and a myofascial course and an acupoint course. And so I've got a whole pile of different ones, but the spine course is my favorite. And I think because it is so important, and I don't think that the programs are doing a good enough job in teaching that, because it is so much a part of rehab. It's so much a part of physical therapy, and it's astounding the difference you can make just like that in these cases, that lameness cases, in some of the neurologic cases, but a lot of lameness cases, and old dog and hunched up and they don't know what's going on, and the cruciate got better and the vet says there's nothing wrong. Well, there's a sacroiliac joint dysfunction that's never been addressed. If you don't address that, then he doesn't want to use the leg, and it doesn't matter how pretty the knee is. So the spinal manual therapy is my love, my absolute love. And it's just, and yeah, well, and I just have one story that I want to share. And there was a vet from Hawaii who came up, and she spent her week with us for her internship. And at the end of it, she's like, I am amazed. She says, you guys, they come in and they can walk out the door feeling better. Like you have moved something, adjusted something, or we don't use that word, but people understand it, mobilize something, and maybe done some modalities. And she says, and you have patients that walk out the door better right away. She says, as a vet, I have nothing that makes them better right away, which is when you let that sink in, right? It's like, sure, you can do surgery, but they don't feel better right away. You can give them meds, but they don't feel better walking out that door. Right. So I was like, yeah, and I would say a large percentage of that was the manual therapy.
Yeah. My husband always reminds me how amazing we are, vet rehabbers. And he says, who else can teach a paralyzed animal or person to walk again? Like we teach paralyzed dogs to walk again. Like you're amazing. And he reminds me of that. And I always use that to remind all the vet rehabbers we are, like the things that we do and what we're able to achieve. One of the problems, obviously, with your courses is it's very hands-on, right? So it's not that easy to teach. You can't really teach that passion online. It's just not something that you can be taught online.
And I don't feel like it's ethical.
Yeah, it's not,
because I want to see, and the amount of times I've been like, okay, no, you're not even on C7. So no, here, this is where you got to do. Here's how you got to get on C7. So I just don't think you can do it online to the same.
Yeah.
I don't want to compromise my values.
No, I mean, I'm in agreement. Listen, there are times where we can learn things online, and there are times when in-person is still needed.
Yeah,
especially with hands-on stuff. You got to make sure that you're in the right place and doing the right thing. Laurie, it's been so amazing chatting to you. Thank you so much. And just from all the vet rehabbers all around the world, we just want to thank you for everything that you've done for our profession. You really achieved amazing things. And I'm looking forward to seeing all the other things that you're still going to achieve, because I don't think it's over yet. Thank you so much for everything that you do for our profession. We are all very, very appreciative.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a great day. Cheers,
you
Laurie.
too. Bye.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about veterinary rehabilitation. For more information about continuing education for vet rehab therapists that you can do online, you can go to Onlinepethealth.com. I'd like to thank you for listening to this podcast, and of course thank our sponsors, Pulse Vet. We thank them for their commitment to their mission to improve the quality of life of the animals that we all love by developing, validating, and providing advanced shockwave therapy at the highest level of support and service. Remember, you can reach them at pulsevet.com or info@pulsevet.com. See you all next week.